Hey guys, if you retired from the federal government, would you be able to live on the pension? The average federal pension today is about $28,000 a year, and the average Social Security check is about $19,000 a year. In this video, I will be combining the federal pension with the Social Security check, as you are able to receive both concurrently. What I will not be including is any money in a thrift savings plan or any type of military pension. When you can retire from the federal government varies greatly on your minimum retirement age, which is outlined on a chart depending on what year you were born. Even if you have 20, 30, or 35 years in the federal government, you still have to wait for that minimum age before you can start drawing a pension. I will work through a few scenarios. For these examples, I will give you the assumptions for my calculations. One is that you're 62 years old, which means I'll be using the 1.1% multiplier. 2, you have worked for the federal government for at least 20 years. 3, I'm using a high 3 salary, which will be the average of 3 years you had the highest pay. 4, I will be adding $19,000 to the total amount, which equals the average Social Security check you should be receiving. It is worth noting that because of the high 3 rule for the federal pension, a lot of federal employees end up moving to a high cost living area before they retire, the last 3 years, whether it's New York City, Washington D.C., San Francisco. That way they can maximize their salary and in turn maximize their pension. I will be looking at 3 cities: Washington D.C., Austin, Texas, and Los Angeles, California. Currently, the most common GS grade in this country is GS-12. However, in high-cost areas, this is inflated somewhat, so I will be using GS-13 to start with. Okay, so in Washington, D.C., a GS-13 Step 6 retiring from the federal government would have, on average, a high salary of $124,439. We times this by 20 for 20 years, and then times it once again by 1.1%. That equals $27,376 plus $19,000 for Social Security, and that equals about $46,000 a year, or about $3,800 a month. Now, let's take a look at the same situation, but this time the federal employee is a GS-14. A GS-14 Step 6 retiring from the federal government would have on average a high salary of $144,466. Times this by 20 times 1.1% equals $31,000 plus $19,000 is about $50,000 a year, which is about $4,200 a month. Alright, so let's use this same type of information, but this time the federal employee is in Austin, Texas. And right up front, I know that this is going to be a little bit lower because the cost of living in Austin, Texas is 18%, where in Washington, D.C. it's about 33%. Let's run the numbers and see. A GS-13 Step 6 in Austin, Texas has a high 3 salary of $110,000. Times 20 times 1.1% equals $24,000 plus $19,000 equals about $43,000 a year, which amounts to $3,600 a month, which is about $250 less a month than the same employee in the same grade in Washington, D.C. Next up is a GS-14 Step 6 in Austin, Texas, which has a high 3 salary of $130,000 a year. $130,000 times 20 times 1.1% equals $28,700 plus $19,000 for Social Security equals about $47,000 a year, which amounts to $39.75 a month, which again is about $250 less than the same employee in Washington, D.C. Now let's shift our attention to Los Angeles, California, which has a higher cost of living than Washington, D.C. A GS-13 Step 6 in Los Angeles would have a high 3 salary of $124,000 a year, times 20 times 1.1% equals $27,000 plus $19,000 for Social Security equals $46,000 a year, which amounts to about $38.60 a month. Now, a GS-14 Step 6 in Los Angeles would have a high salary of $146,000 a year, times 20 times 1.1% equals $32,000 plus $19,000 for Social Security equals $51,000 a year, which amounts to $4,273 a month. As we can see, it really makes a great difference on where you spend your final 3 years in the federal government. From the 3 cities I just compared, it is in your financial benefit to retire from Los Angeles, California. But this isn't even the highest cost area. To find that, you would travel to San Francisco, California, where the cost of living allowance is around 44%. Okay, so let's take a step back. We know that not everybody is going to retire at 20 years. And if you think about the person just coming out of college, say they're 22, 23 years old, if they did 20 years, they would still be in their mid-40s. So a lot of people that enter the government end up doing 30, 35, or 40 years. So let's take the previous example and replace the number 20 to the number 30, signifying 30 years. A GS-14 Step 6 in Los Angeles with a high salary of $146,000 a year times 30 times 1.1% equals $48,000 plus $19,000 for Social Security would equal $67,000 a year, which amounts to $5,618 a month. For comparison, right now, the average national salary is about $51,000 a year. This means that if you decided to retire after 30 years in the federal government, you could comfortably retire in a small or mid-sized town, as you would be making more than the average salary in the United States. But if you wanted to live in an area like New York City, or Los Angeles, or San Francisco, you probably would not be able to make that work. Keep in mind that there are also dozens of foreign countries where you can retire for a lot less than here in the United States. We're talking about countries like Spain, Costa Rica, Portugal, Panama, and these type of countries have what we call retirement visas that are designed specifically for expats that have money coming in every month. And as long as you're able to prove a certain amount of money coming into your account on a monthly basis, you would be eligible for these type of visas. So can you retire on a federal government pension? The answer is yes. You can comfortably retire on a federal government pension when you combine it with the Social Security check. Now, most federal employees also have the thrift savings plan, which can equal hundreds of thousands of dollars over the lifespan of that career. On a final note, also realize that in these calculations, I didn't consider taxes. I didn't consider the survivor benefit. If you were to die, perhaps you would want a loved one to receive part of your pension. And I didn't consider any type of healthcare costs you might incur at an elderly age. Finally, I'm not a financial advisor. I just thought it would be fun to crunch some of these numbers together and share it with you. So what about you? Do you plan on retiring from the federal government? If you do, let me know down below. Well, that wraps up my video on can you live on a federal government retirement? If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, please leave that down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.